Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today right here on the Mike Lee Show. And today I am very, very honored to have the one and only Angelo Ellerbee with Double Exposure here today, the PR guru. Angelo, how are you doing today?
I am blessed, 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 and now I'm even more in abundance because I see you.
So tell us, how have you been doing throughout this pandemic? There's so much going on out there in the world. You still have maintained, you've been busy, you've been still working just as hard as you were before the pandemic. How have you been able to
I,
keep?
I am able to conquer because I have a faith and I believe in God so much.
Mhm,
And while we are presented with worldly obstacles, my whole direction to life is if there's a detour, you
mhm,
have to learn to work around that detour. And because of the blessings of God, I've learned to work around the detours to
mhm.
keep the car moving, to keep the energy flowing, and to get to my destination. Nothing can block a blessing unless you want the blessing to be blocked.
Tell us a little bit about you and how you got into the business. How did you get involved with PR and marketing?
I'm telling you, my OPR history is
And
a,
and and I want the full story.
okay. All right, I'll give you the full story. PR was a fluke. It was something that I never, ever, ever, ever thought about ever doing. My degree is in fashion design. I lived in the greatest city in the world, which is Newark, New Jersey, Brick City.
Mm,
And I came from an incredible mother and a loving siblings who encouraged me to be who I was to be. And whatever that
mm,
was, they
mhm,
wanted me to be that. And I started out in designs and in modeling. I lived in Paris, France for 2.5 years as a model. Also, I should say, as a cook in one of the restaurants by the Champs Elysees. For the
uh-huh,
first 6 months, I was cutting up collard greens and frying chicken
uh-huh.
because my portfolio was not representative of what my physical was.
Mhm,
So I
mhm,
didn't get booked. So I had to be shoot the book. I had to be shoot pictures and then start all over again in Paris, France. So
mhm,
I did some modeling in Paris, France, which gave me the affordability to come back to America and help my mother and my sisters out to buy a house for my mom, which was the most important thing. And the reason that I went there, I did not finish high school in the United States. When I came back, I had what was a social promotion
mhm,
because I was living in the States and from 17 until 18 years old. So when I got back, I got very, very involved. I went to FIT, got my degree, while I worked at the city of Newark
mhm,
in the mayor's policy and development office for a couple of years. Began to do fashion shows. I was doing fashion shows from 17 to God knows how long.
mhm,
So my thing was always to be creative. And I always thought that my city was a great city, as I introduced it as a great city. But it
mhm,
was a city that lacked culture,
mhm,
lacked acceptance. And
mhm,
my plight at a very young age was to bring culture within an urban city. They called it the brick city for reasons.
mhm,
And so, because I was geared and I had a clear understanding and identity of my sexuality,
mhm,
and it was not important for anyone else, but it was only the importance for me for the love of my mother and my sisters that I was able to live a life very freely, and I did just that. And so I began to do fashion shows. I brought in the Patty Clevelands and the Imans and the Belly Johnsons, and it was that every year. Carmen de Lavalon, Joffrey Holder, and this is when I was about 18, 19 years old, maybe even younger than that,
mhm,
and I start to enrich my community with a culture of dance, the Albanelli dancers, Carmen de Lavalon, and we would do these shows. We did them for 17, 18 years.
mhm,
We gave money back to the Peter Ho Foundation, which is a hospital, a division in a hospital called the St. Michael's Hospital in Newark, New Jersey, that was for AIDS and AIDS research. That we went into a lot of the Black colleges and we made sure that the scholarships were given, because everything for me was always an upliftment. I always believed that my people, my culture, they needed to strive on another level. And I thought it was my job. I guess it was the teaching of my mother. My job to unite and bring together and give the affordabilities to a community that couldn't see beyond their own sights.
Mhm.
And I wanted them to see how wonderful the world can be. My mom gave me such a freedom to move about.
Mhm.
As I stated, I lived in Paris, France for when I was a kid. And then I came back. I never was stuck in my Newark environment. I would get on the trains and go to New York City, and I would walk up and down the streets just to see the sights and wish for one day that I would be able to go into the store, go in there, and I met different people. Well, in this city, young people they were denied the fact to grow outside of the city and see another culture.
Mhm.
I legally adopted my sister's children at birth,
Mhm.
uh, three boys, and it was so very important for me that I did not raise them within a inner city. That I wanted to give them exposure, and I
Mhm.
wanted to expand their horizons. I wanted them to make sure that they were going to ever be able to meet kings and queens and be
Mhm.
able to communicate with people that didn't necessarily look like them. I wanted to educate them. I wanted to stimulate them. I wanted to motivate them
Mhm.
to get to the apex of success and have
Mhm.
an appreciation for all the blessings that God presents in front of you. But I wanted them to be prepared for it. And so I
Mhm.
took them into a community as I wanted to take the at large community with me as I traveled through the world to enrich lives. And so that's where the fashion shows came in at. That's where my design came in at. That's where my dance came at. I also did some dancing for Alvin Ailey, and I also did 1983 and 1984, designing the costumes for Alvin Ailey.
Mhm.
Uh, I just learned the importance of diversifying,
Mhm.
and how I got into PR was the biggest. It was just I did the fashion shows,
Mhm.
and it was 2 to 3 thousand people that came to the show. So I didn't get a chance to meet each and every person that came to the
Mhm.
show.
Mhm.
But there was a young lady by the name of Camille Mtume who
Mhm.
came to the show, and she always thought the shows were really wonderful because we had people coming out of ceilings up from the floor. They were very creative fashion shows.
Mhm.
So many people would attend. And she said, Angelo, my husband is James Mtume. Well, I didn't know who what James Mtume was.
Mhm.
I knew the record Juicy Fruit, that I did know.
Mhm.
And she said, well, we're working on his second album, which was You, Me, and He. And we
Mhm.
wanted to know if he would do the album cover for it
Mhm.
and style the album cover. And I said, oh, sure. We became very, very close friends. She was a designer. I was an established designer in New Jersey and
Mhm.
New York City. So it was teach one, reach one.
Mhm.
And I showed her the ropes, introduced her to the various people in the community. And then Tume came to me one day and said, if you can do all these things for Camille, why don't you manage me? And I laughed at him. I said, you got to be joking. I don't know nothing about no music and know nothing. He said, so this is what we're going to do. And if you know Mtume, you know that he's a educator.
Mhm.
He said, you're going to manage me. And he would send me over to Sony
Mhm.
every other day to
Mhm.
meet these team of people who did not look like me.
Mhm.
And that was intimidating at that point. But he was such a teacher, an educator. So
Mhm.
each day that I would come back from these meetings, I would have to sit in his yellow room in his house. And I would have to tell him what this one said and what this one did. And he said, what did you say about that? And what did you say? And I was like, Ntume, I don't know. So it took me about a good 6 months. So then they called Ntume up and they said, I think he's ready. And
Uh-huh.
so I guess that's when I got involved
Mhm.
in the publicity
Mhm.
and management. There was a movie called The Native Son. This was the first movie that Oprah Winfrey ever starred in. And Tume was doing the music score. Richard Wright had did the play. I had the opportunities of meeting Baldwin and working very closely with James Baldwin. These were phenomenal things that were coming my way, and I was totally not prepared for this whole thing. So, and Tume said, "Well, I guess we're gonna start to get this publicity going." And so I went on board 200 newspapers, and I would just look at the entertainment guidelines. And then I would get on the phone and I would just sound so ridiculous doing calls,
Mhm.
writing press releases. And finally, we began to nurture relationships with the media.
Mhm.
And Tume became very visual with regards to media. And I became a publicist. And
Mhm.
so then I started working in the corners of my basement in Newark, New Jersey, in the house that we had brought my mom,
Mhm.
with absolutely no money,
Mhm.
none, none whatsoever. I
Mhm.
went into the garage and took my mother's old dining room table out, put it in the basement. Back then, you had what was a team phone. Called and you get a team phone. And I would answer that phone. Double exposure, double exposure. That was my team phone.
Uh-huh.
There was a young girl by the name of Sonia Kimball who named the company. And there was a gentleman by the name of John Kellerman Greer who said, "Okay, I like the name, but I don't like the way that it looks. Let's drop these E's and put in some X's." He
Mhm.
said, don't you know what Malcolm X is about?" I was like, "Yeah, okay, I know what Malcolm X is." I said, "All right, so change it." So that's how the X's
Mhm.
married into one another. That's how the name was created. And then
Mhm.
I started doing club music. I did club music. I mean, in Jersey was the foundation for dance and club music. I
Mhm.
handled like Jocelyn Brown and CC Pennington and Sybil. These were huge club names within our community and
Mhm.
abroad. And I would honestly, I would ring doorbells to people that I knew in terms of that I knew was in music. And I would, this guy named Kevin Hedge, who was the leader of this group called Blaze, he laughed at me still to this day because I would come to him and I say, "I have campaign one and I have campaign two, and
Uh-huh.
campaign one is going to be this, and you have to do that." And so he let, still to this day, when he calls me, he said, "Are you still working on campaign one?"
A
So
campaign too.
oh, campaign two.
Uh-huh.
And Kevin was with the group called Blaze.
I
And
remember Blaze.
Blaze, they had a year, they were signed to, first they were signed independently, and
Mhm.
then they were signed to Motown and put out an incredible album before its time
Mhm.
called 25 Years Later.
Mhm.
I met a gentleman at BET, and his name was Billy Woodruff. And
Mhm.
Billy and I became friends. And he
Mhm.
said, "Angelo, I really don't want to do these. I don't really want to be at BET. I really want to do my own thing." I said, "So why aren't you doing your own thing?" He said, he said, "Why don't you help me?" So I was sitting in a meeting with Timmy Regisford and some people at Motown. And I said, "I have somebody that I want to do the video, the music
Mhm.
video."
Mhm.
And they said, "Who, Angelo?" I said, "This guy named Billy Woodruff. He works for BET."
Mhm.
And they said, "We're going to shoot it in London." And so I called Billy. I said, "Billy, they're going to shoot this in London. This is what the budget is. And yeah, you're hired."
Mhm.
We went to London and we opened for Bobby Brown.
Mhm.
That's when I met Whitney Houston. They
Mhm.
had a record out together. We were doing it at the Wimbledon Stadium.
Mhm.
Um, and then things just started to blossom,
Mhm.
blossom, man. And I always tell people, don't sit back and worry about your money. People worry about money in terms of opening their businesses. And I
Mhm.
know that times have changed, but
Mhm.
the heart and the mind, the bigger and the energy doesn't change.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's what you got to go with.
Right.
You can't sit back and talk about, "I have an idea," but you're afraid to execute the idea because you don't have the money to. You don't have to have money to execute your idea. You have to have a plan.
Mhm.
And if you know people and you're networking with people, you have to ask them to come to the table. And can you refer me to this one? And can I do this? And maybe it's not, I can't use that. I need to go this way because this way is going to be a cheaper way. You
Mhm.
can make your dreams come true. I
Mhm.
started from the basement of my mother's house with no money,
Mhm.
not some money,
Mhm.
no money. And you will, and then you can't get into the business initially looking for financial rewards.
Mhm.
You have to really. favor a lot, get paid some, favor a lot, get
Mm-hmm.
paid some,
Mm-hmm.
and collect on the reputation.
Mm.
Do a good job. If you do a good job, it's going to be reciprocal. And clients are going to constantly come back. People are going to constantly talk to you, talk about you, and you become a favorite. And then people start to come your way. But the work ethic has to be there.
Mm. You you had some great nuggets in there, and with you being in the marketing and PR business, how great, let the audience know and people know how great, how important it is to have relationships in this business.
It's really funny. I many times when you're beginning in PR, you don't have the proper list because journalists, editors, they change like you change your underwear. So
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to have a correct list.
Mm-hmm.
And people are so attached to their mailing list and that email list
Mm-hmm.
that it blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I look at those lists as a phone book. Everybody got one. It's the yellow pages, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you have is that you have relationships. You
Mm-hmm.
can give away your list, but it's your relationships that you have that can make you get on the phone and that can make someone say, "Oh yeah, Angela, I'll do it. I'll get it done." It's relationships, and
Yeah.
relationships is 99% of
Mm-hmm.
the work of my business.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather lose a client than lose a editor or
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
freelance writer or
Right.
a blogger or somebody in social media. Yeah, I'd rather lose the client based on a client is going to come and a client is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the people that feed me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have to make sure that I'm going to be there for them.
Yeah.
And then I have to develop that relationship that's going to spell out longevity.
Right. Right. Because and what you're saying, they're part of the foundation.
They are the foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. The
They're the
glue.
foundation of, I believe, marketing and PR, whatever you go to do, those relations, you can't do what you want to do if you have no relationships.
Mm-hmm. You've.
And it's just important that you learn how to keep them. So it's
Mm-hmm.
mannerisms, it's being a friend,
Mm-hmm.
it's sharing information, it's
Mm-hmm.
bringing exclusives to them. It's a lot of things how you go to cultivate relationships. But I think yeah, it's like 90 something 9% of the business of any business that you do is
Mm-hmm.
how fast you can pick up the phone and make something happen.
Happen. Yeah. Yeah. Um, you started your company Double Exposure, and why did you? Why was it important to you to start that company, and name it Double Exposure?
It was important for me to start the company when I started the company because, well, first of all, it started in the basement of my mother's house, but I just knew that wasn't going to happen. My mother was washing clothes in the other room, and my
Mm-hmm.
nephews were running down there. So I knew that wasn't going to be a staying thing there. So my hustle had to be my hustle. And I had to hustle. I was working my double exposure out of my mother's basement, but I was also the senior director of publicity for Chrysalis Records,
Mm-hmm.
which you had Arrested Development that I nurtured as
Mm-hmm.
the director of publicity for the urban side of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Urban Soul. It was a bunch of creative people that I was working with at Chrysalis
Mm-hmm.
while I was doing double exposure. So I had to support that. I had one person in my mother's basement, Kathy, who was running double exposure for my mother's basement while I was at Chrysalis doing what I needed to do to bring the money to pay Kathy and to think about what was going to be the next position there. And while I was there, I met this wonderful lawyer, Jewish guy, Doug Breitbart, who I was working on the project, Urban Soul, Roland Clark.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that Roland was doing very well in the label. I was treating him like he was the star. And so I established what was the relationship with this manager. And then I decided to leave Chrysalis. And he said, "Well, I have a little spot on 7th Avenue, a little corner that you can work on." And I worked in that corner with a young girl by the name of Karen Taylor for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, we listen. This was the most obscure spot because we it was the conference room, but it was a door that led you to come in. So whoever came in, that was coming in, it was a mess. But anyway,
Wow.
yeah. And so that I mean, those are the kinds of things that we had to actually go through. But anyway, I was walking down the street one day. It was like almost adjacent, and they had this big old sign on the second floor. It was 2,500 square feet,
Mm-hmm.
and it was on top of this Italian restaurant and 850 Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked around and I knew that if I would have went up there, I would have never ever got it. So I had to think smart. Italian restaurant. My lawyer is Italian. The lawyer back then was an Italian. His name
Mm-hmm.
was Ed Toptani. And I
Mm-hmm.
called him up and I said, Ed, I'm up here on 7th Avenue and 54th Street. Can you come up here right now? I mean, right now.
Right now.
I mean, right now. I want you to go. I want you to come with a camera. And can you bring your white assistant with you as well?
Uh-huh.
And he was like, what is this about? Once he got there, I said, I want this space. So can you go and introduce yourself to this landlord?
Mm-hmm.
Go up there and look at the space and tell me what it is. I didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
He came
Wow.
back and said, Angelo is really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay. I had no money. So I ran into Full Force, the singing group Full Force, and they were looking
Mm-hmm.
for a UK deal. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I met somebody when I was in Paris that did records. I called the guy up and said, "You familiar with Full Force? They did this, they did da, 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 da." And so they united, and that I got a percentage of 20 grand.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I took some of that money
Mm-hmm.
and I paid my lease for 5 months. The people signed it. My name is Angelo. My middle name is Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And when we signed the lease, I said, Ed, don't use my last name. Use Angelo Antonio only. On the signing, you can go Angelo Antonio Ellerbee.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm now moving in. Well, not a dime, not what they call my mother used to say, not a
Wow.
piss or a pot or a piss, however it goes.
Right.
I move in. All of my friends come with me. We were moving in. It was a floor. Now, literally, Michael, it was a whole floor. When you opened up the elevator,
The
you were on
floor.
my
You're
floor.
on the floor.
Right.
Wow.
And I had such wonderful friends that knew I had no money.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Byron Barnes, a wonderful makeup artist, he said to me, he looked at me, he said, I hope you know what you bit off. I said, no, we bit this off together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Double Exposure was born.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And from the relationships of fashion and all, people started to come our way. But and I had a staff at that time of 20 something odd people. And what I did is I was smart enough to know that I was competing with a white agencies all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to make something really different with my company.
Mm-hmm.
So I hired someone to do hip hop. I hired someone to do mainstream press,
Mm-hmm.
somebody to do music trade, someone that did reggae, somebody that did gospel, and they all had to work together on one project.
Mm-hmm.
So when that client got there, they were not just getting that direction in terms of the genre in which they were singing in or singing to that demographic. They were getting they were getting a smorgasbord. They were getting all areas.
Mm-hmm.
Then I said, what's going to make me really stand out here is there's a million PR companies out here, and still to this day there's a million. What's going to make this company stand out? And I started to watch the Lady Singers Blues. I started to watch all of the Supremes, and then I
Mm-hmm.
started to do my history on Berry Gordy. And I
Mm-hmm.
tried to understand how was it that this black man in the 50s and 60s were able to stand and compete with white folk at
Mm.
that time when racism was as, whew, if you think it is no, then it's just a repeat.
It's a
So
repeat in it. Yeah.
it's just repeating now. So he knew that he needed to make his artists non-offensive.
Mm-hmm.
He needed to make them look like. what those white folks was looking like,
Mhm.
speak like, walk like, be like. Now, I'm not with it or against it. I just know that it worked. And back in that time, you had to, when you're in Rome, you do what the Romans do, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I started a program called Charm School,
Mm-hmm.
where I did a 24-week artist development program that taught diction, speech, interview techniques, taxes, finances, the whole works.
I
So
know
one
some
of
people.
my
I know some artists that could use that right now. Like
so
go.
we started with Mary J. Blige.
Uh huh.
We went from Mary J. Blige to Alicia Keys.
Did Mary take the whole class?
Mary took 17 weeks.
Okay. So I was 17.
She took all 17
Okay,
weeks.
Mary. Okay.
But you see, what you got to understand
I love Mary.
now, I want you to
Love Mary.
understand this. What I do is not, it's not instant coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I give out brewed coffee.
Mm.
It takes time for the teaching. You want something instant,
Mm-hmm.
then go to social media.
Yeah.
That and if you take and everybody wants to be a star, but I always tell people if you spell the word backwards, that's not what you
Right.
want your career to be about. So you want to take the time to educate and motivate yourself, stimulate yourself, and make yourself aware of the who, the what's, the whens, the where's, and the whys, how to
Yeah.
position yourself, how to present yourself. Those things spell out longevity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure people thought back in that day and time that real love was going to be her one and only hit. So
Here she came again.
it's 3 years later, decades later,
Yeah.
and she is what an Oscar nominated actress.
And what is Mary coming up on? Is it 25 or 30 years?
I think it's 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, come on. What a career.
So I'm trying to
Yeah.
say to you that what you put in is what you get out.
Yeah.
And she was going through all kinds of things in her life,
Yeah.
but she stayed focused to win because
Yeah.
she wanted to win.
Yeah. And
Same thing with so many other people that have come.
yeah.
And then I had the opportunities of working with, oh my God, with DMX.
Mm-hmm.
I did everything on Rough Riders, every artist from Eve to the Locks to DMX to
Mm-hmm.
Drag On. It went on and on. And then I got into Jamaican music and did the first and the second Shabba Rank
Mm-hmm.
albums. Patra, Cobra,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, the Marleys, Sedella Marley, Rita Marley. I did all of the everything that was coming from the Jamaican side, and then
Mm-hmm.
gospel. Karen Clark Shear's first album when I was the vice president of Island Black Music. I
Mm-hmm.
had the pleasures of working and creating. Really, Karen Clark Shear was her first album.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was Donald Lawrence, and
Mm-hmm.
then we got into Mr. Biggs, and then I did all the press, the jump off press for Drew Hill, Genuine,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's what you
Very,
get out.
very high end and very memorable moments in music history.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
it's also understanding what you are creating and
Mm-hmm.
what the subject matter is willing to do along with you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a taught thing. I
Yeah.
just wish people in positions that they would begin to care about the artist a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
take him or her to the side and mentor them and teach them. If you go this way, dog, this is what's going to happen. If you go this way, girl, this is what's going to happen. Don't let your friends step in the way and block your blessings. Don't
Right.
let a joint, don't let a pill, don't let this is
Yeah.
what you was made to do.
Yeah.
And when you deter from that, you can fall down and Humpty Dumpty couldn't put your ass back together again.
Right.
So it
Stay.
becomes very, very clear to me that they understand
Mm-hmm.
this is what you asked for. And if it is what you asked for, then you should deliver and let nothing stand in the way.
That's right. That's right. Let's talk a little bit about where we are, Angelo, in music today. Music has changed. You've got the business that has changed. Streaming has now taken the place of record companies and the conglomerates where there were back in the day there were all these different record companies who would actually have these different departments like the marketing department, radio, and all of this stuff. How have you seen, because you've been in the business and you've seen how it used to be up
I
to
don't.
now?
You know what? At the end of the day, for me, Michael, it's all about has it really changed? Because they're still making money, right?
Somebody's making money.
Somebody making some money, right?
Hmm.
And the freedom that we get as independent record companies versus the major record companies is a structure of understanding.
Hmm.
You know, it's just like, oh, we can't come talking about 1929 when they were selling records. We
Hmm.
had to we had to merge into 1960.
Hmm.
Well, that period changed as well. When it was the phonograph, when it was the cassette tapes,
Hmm.
then when it was the CDs, and now it is what it is. So systematically, as I see it, there's still a return of dollars and cents. It's the structuring
Structure.
of the business that
Yeah.
one has to learn. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that before you go to really take the time to hone your craft, you
Hmm.
need to take the same time to understand the business of the music
Hmm.
that or the music industry that you're entering into. You need to understand if I do I want a 360 deal? Do
Hmm.
I here's the difference in here's the difference in a production deal. And here's the difference in if I just enter and do it myself. A production deal is very different from anything else,
Hmm.
very different from a 360. So production deal means you sign into your production company, which
Right.
means you're working with them and net and all essence, you're working for them.
Right.
They can give you what they choose to give you.
Hmm.
And there's another thing about young people being more ambitious than they being ambitious.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we want it right now, so we're gonna sign this, we're gonna do this, and hey, nobody took the time to read and understand what you signed away. I think Megan Stallion was a good example of that.
Hmm.
Once you know the first album, you know everybody gonna rip your ass off,
Hmm.
and then you sit back and you say, now I'm established. Now I have a fan base. Now I have a sense of understanding. But these are things that you have to do beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so many examples
Hmm.
that has been presented to us in this day and time that we need to learn by.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift, people want to own. It's
Hmm.
really important that you own what you created, right?
The same thing like with Lauren Hill
It's
is that
the
she's doing
same
the same
thing.
thing. Yeah.
You don't own it. You have to have
Don't own it.
ownership in
Yeah.
order to bring value
Yeah.
to who you are.
Owning those masters.
So Taylor Smith said, no, 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 and made it public that I'm going to re-record the records that I made and I signed under you, and they're going to become my property. I
Hmm.
hope she wins on it. I think with the kind of fan base that she has,
Yeah.
she may
She'll.
win. She may
Yeah.
win,
Yeah.
but not for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so it's just really good that you get don't get an ambitious lawyer, get an
Hmm.
ambitious lawyer, an astute lawyer that's going to go through the wherewithals with you in terms of what kind of deal you're signing.
Hmm.
Don't I mean you there is no stupid question
Hmm.
when you sign in anything or enter into anything. You
Yes.
ask the questions, and no one should lead you to their thoughts.
Yeah.
You must come with your own thoughts, your own directions, and
Yeah.
your own questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
how I see it.
Yep. Oh my God! Before we go, we got to talk about a few more things.
Sure.
One of them is we've got to talk about your merchandising.
Okay.
Before you had baskets, candles.
Okay.
You've got the book. Where, first of all, are these things still available
Oh, absolutely.
and on your website?
If they go to my website, dxxnyc.com,
Hmm.
um, I want to say this: my candles and my books and all of that, portions of those proceeds go back to HIV and AIDS. That's the
Hmm.
first thing.
Hmm.
It's
Wonderful.
very important that I say that because
Yes.
it's not. It's not a give to Angelo. It's a give back to the community. And
Mm-hmm.
so I created this candle line. And the story behind the candle line is I pray 45 minutes every day,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to take the time to uh, really show God my appreciation for all the great wealth that He has given to me. And so I have these white candles. My apartment is white. I have these white candles that I light throughout my apartment every day,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm able to pray. And
Mm-hmm.
they're scented candles. And so somebody came into my house and said one day, "Why don't you do a candle line?" I was like, "Okay, no, you on
Mm-hmm.
drugs. I'm not doing that." And I
Mm-hmm.
thought about it again, and I thought about it again and again, and I said, "Okay." So we found someone to come up with a fragrance,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we started to put together Ellerbee's Elegance. And so the
Oh, these
candle line
elegant.
comes with the
And
two.
that's what it's called. And Ellerbee's elegance, right?
Yeah, Ellerbee's Elegance.
Okay.
Um, and I give all credit to Jesus R for coming up with the name and coming up with the creation and telling me that's what I needed to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. The book. Let's talk a little bit about the book. You really, you've had a how total in total is it three books that you have?
It's two books and one in the works.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's talk about the one that you released. What was it? Was it a year ago?
Yeah, I think it was about 2 years ago. And Act Angelo.
Okay.
And it said
Angelo.
Dionne Warwick's Act Angelo, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, and it gives you just a smorgasbord of people that I had worked with.
Uh-huh.
And the book is nothing about what people think that it is. They think that I'm going to sit up and gossip about. I don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the book was about the starting points of my relationships with these people and what I
Mm-hmm.
did to structure them and take them through
Mm-hmm.
whatever trial or tribulation or whatever starting points that they needed to be at. And so I just thought that the book was not just for the entertainer, but it was for the layperson. It was for the mother who was struggling raising her children,
Mm-hmm.
single parent homes. It was talking about the imprisoned guy that is coming out of prison with no wishes, no hopes, and no directions. The book just was a book of upliftment.
Mm-hmm.
It gave you some insights into how to get through hurdles of your life. I'm a staunch believer that God has given me so many chances to overcome that I think that it's just really important that you give your brother and you give your sister and you give your loved ones and ones that you don't know
Mm-hmm.
the abilities to play baseball
Mm-hmm.
and not just count to one strike or two strikes or three strikes. Sometimes it takes seven strikes until you get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what the book is. It's a motivational book. And it's almost can use as be like a self-help book. And
Mm-hmm.
my second book was called The Sense of Success.
This, yes.
Yeah, and I wrote that book because I was seeing so many unhappy people,
Mm-hmm.
that had reached their destiny or what they're supposed to look at as their destiny in
Mm-hmm.
terms of I used to be a singer, I used to be an actor, I used to be a dancer, I used to be all these things, and then
Mm.
because I got older, I can't be those. You can be
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to be.
Any.
Carmen de Lavalon is an incredible dancer, was dancing at 89.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you fall down, you have to learn how to get yourself up. And then you have to ask yourself the question, why did I fall down? That's one question. Now ask the second question, how am I going to get back up? Then there's a third question, how am I going to stay up?
And
These,
stop from getting being on that ground.
there you go. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I think people
Wow.
want to feel sorry for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's called life.
Yeah.
I always say, I give out imaginary maturity pills.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them to take them 3 times a day with a glass of water and grow up.
Well, yeah.
You got to grow up.
Yeah.
You got to accept the challenges that life presents to you.
Yeah.
And you should let nobody take your motivation or your strive or your energy or your insight away from you. I love me some Angelo Ellerbee. I am romantically in love with me. I am blessed by the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. So I believe that. And so I live it. And so I share it. I'm going to tell you how to treat me. You're not going to treat me the way you believe to be treated,
Mm-hmm.
that you should
Mm-hmm.
treat me. And so those are just my doses of reality with dealing with people.
Very well done. Very
Thank you.
well said.
Thank you.
Uh, what is next for you? Where do you what for everything that you've done in the business? What have you not touched that you want to do?
Well, you know what? I am very thankful
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very, very blessed. And I am celebrating 63 years and doing what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to ask God to allow me to follow in the shadows of his footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever he leads me, I will follow. I don't want to talk about, I mean, I don't want to talk about things that I want to do
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know if they come to fruition. But if I trust in him and I take his leadership and I walk within the shadows of his footsteps, I think I'm going to get to my destiny, whatever the destiny may be.
Yeah, and it's all in His favor.
Oh, it's in his favor.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when you wake up to understand that, we're all good.
All good. Angela, it's always great talking to you. Always
Pleasure. Thank you.
uplifting, always edifying, always storytelling, always full of life.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
So
Michael.
much for talking with us today. And you're always welcome here to promote. And thank you for all that you've done for our Radar Radio and for me and my platform.
I love you. I love
Thank you.
you. I love your platform. I love what
Thank
you're
you.
doing. And I want you just to continue to believe and know that if you can claim your own victory. If you
Thank you
claim
very
that
much.
victory, the battle is won.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's one then. I'm going to claim it. Thank you so much. We'll
My
talk to you
pleasure.
soon. Everybody, thank you for joining us tonight right here on The Mike Lee Show with the one and only Angelo Ellerbee. You'll only get him once because he don't do no interviews. So we're lucky. You're lucky. Thank you all. We'll see you all next time. Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
Michael. Bye bye.
Thank you.